Hello, welcome to What If Tanjiro Was Born a Demon King Part 7. Last time we left off with Kokushibo disarming Muagio, offering him the possibility to become a demon and survive. With the story now caught up, let's begin. Kokushibo stands in front of Muagio Tokito after having pinned him to a pillar with his own blade and says that his heart is moved on seeing one of his own descendants, something he had never imagined. Muagio stares at the upper rank in silence as Kokushibo continues and says that the Mist Hashira's arm would regrow once he became a demon, certain that Muzan Kibuzuyi would allow such a thing, given that the other upper ranks had all been slain. Transfixed on his descendant, Kokushibo attempts to try and stem Muagio's bleeding but then says that if Muagio died due to excessive blood loss or if he were rejected by Muzan then it would be fate. Kokushibo tells Muagio that this would mean he was a man only meant to go so far as Genya Shinazugawa attempts to sneak up on the demon from afar behind one of the pillars. As Genya shoots at him, he is left utterly shocked as Kokushibo instantly appears behind him and asks if he agrees with his statement and slicing off Genya's gun arm so fast, he wasn't even able to notice. As Genya's left arm plops to the ground, the boy looks in shock and attempts to defend himself as Muagio is horrified and yells out to Genya. Before his hand is able to fully draw his blade, Kokushibo swiftly slices off his other arm as well, leaving the boy bleeding profusely. He sees that Genya has been eating demons and slices his torso clean in half. Muagio is horrified at the sight and attempts to pull his blade out of himself but in vain as he is unable to make it budge. Kokushibo is surprised that Genya is still alive despite having his torso cut in half and tells him that around 300 years ago there was another swordsman who ate demons just like he did. Saying that he had killed that particular swordsman by slicing his torso in half, Kokushibo says that if the same strategy did not work on Genya, then perhaps the boy's weak point was his head. Genya tries to crawl towards his arms to attempt to reattach them as Kokushibo says that he has no reason to allow a fake demon like him to live and begins to slice at his head. Suddenly, he is intercepted by activated Mark Transparent World Saiyan Shinazugawa performing the wind-breathing, fourth form, rising dust storm as Genya is left shocked. Kokushibo immediately retreats backwards and recognizes Saiyan as the Wind Hashira as the latter says he is the wind that will rip Kokushibo's head off. The attack gives Genya enough time to ingest the vial of Tanjiro's blood, making his bleeding stop, instantly regenerating his body and limbs, standing next to his brother, covered in flame patterns. Genya whispers to his brother who roughly responds by calling Genya a pathetic little brother, telling him that the reason he went so far as to kill their own mother was that he wanted to protect Genya. Flashing back to a conversation he had with Tanjiro Kamado during Hashira training, Genya remembers that Tanjiro told him he could not smell a tinge of hatred in Saiyan towards Genya and Tanjiro had told him he did not need to be afraid of his brother because Saiyan had loved him all the while. Saiyan continues and tells Genya that he should have lived a normal life until he reached a ripe old age and attempted to make his wife and children happy, in return for all the happiness that had been taken from them, their siblings and their mother. As Saiyan tells him that he would not have let a single demon get near Genya no matter what, Genya tears up and apologizes to his brother. Meanwhile, Kokushibo feels nostalgic upon seeing a pair of demon slayer brothers. Enraged, Saiyan curses at Kokushibo and lunges forward to attack, as Kokushibo slices at him. Ducking and sliding between Kokushibo's legs, Saiyan catches the demon's foot and flips him over, launching a wind-breathing, first form, dust whirlwind cutter at the upper rank without pause. Saiyan matches blades with Kokushibo, who finally draws his sword out for all to see, a grotesque blade with eyes and veins running down the side of its length as Saiyan notes how disgusting the sight is. Saiyan Shinazugawa and Kokushibo go blade to blade and Kokushibo unleashes a moon-breathing, fifth form, moon spirit calamitous eddy that the Wind Hashira manages to dodge. Noting that Kokushibo is able to repeat his slashes without even moving his blade, Saiyan prepares to counter-attack. Dashing forward, Saiyan performs a wind-breathing, third form, clean storm wind tree and clashes with Kokushibo but is unable to damage the upper rank. Impressed, Kokushibo lauds Saiyan's physical capabilities and notes that they are at their peak as the Hashira is silently awestruck at the demon's own prowess. Analyzing Kokushibo's attacks and seeing that each slash is accompanied with smaller, crescent-shaped blades that changed their size randomly over time, Saiyan thinks to himself that he is not surprised that Muagio Tokito lost to this demon. Thinking that were it not for his experience he would surely have been cut down by now, Saiyan gets excited at Kokushibo's skill and the fact that he is a demon using breaths. Seeing that this makes him a much tougher opponent, Saiyan is thrilled and calls Kokushibo a demon worth killing. Launching a wind-breathing, second form, claws purifying wind, Saiyan leaps forward. As Kokushibo deflects Sainemi's attack, he looks up and sees the Wind Hashira about to slice down at him and blocks the blow. Suddenly, Sainemi goes straight for Kokushibo's neck with Genya Shinazugawa's sword, maneuvering the blade with his right foot. Genya looks on in shock at this move as Kokushibo narrowly evades. The two continue to battle with Sainemi matching Kokushibo blow for blow, much to the demon's delight. The intense combat begins to take its toll on Sainemi, however, as the Wind Hashira finally slips up and narrowly messes up the tip of his swing, missing death by a small margin. Genya looks on with his eyes widening in concern, and Muagio calls out to Sainemi, who is frustrated but all right. Kokushibo reminisces over old battles and thinks back to a fight he had with a previous Wind Hashira back in the Sengoku era and how the both of them had improved their swordsmanship by fighting in a similar manner. Suddenly launching a moon-breathing, sixth form, perpetual night, lonely moon, incessant, Kokushibo manages to slice Sainemi's chest and even cuts off all the surrounding pillars in the room with this attack. Genya calls out to his brother, frustrated as the rubble blocks his view, leaving him unable to see his brother. With blood spilling from his chest, Sainemi stands up straight and finds slashes running along his torso. Kokushibo lauds Sainemi's skill for having kept up with him for so long, but tells him that if he moves now his organs would spill out. Suddenly, he tenses up as his pulse begins to race and he is puzzled at this sudden change. Sainemi begins to chuckle as he sees that the effects of his rare blood work even on an upper rank. With a smirk he lashes forward and attacks Kokushibo, taunting the demon for staggering as he gloats that his rare blood made demons go drunk off the smell as he begins to counter-attack in earnest. Sainemi unleashes a wind-breathing, sixth form, black wind mountain mist which the upper rank narrowly dodges. Shocked to see Sainemi still being capable of fighting, Kokushibo guesses that the Hashira is squeezing his muscles to prevent his organs from spilling out and solidifying his blood with his breaths to stem his bleeding. Impressed at the Hashira's immense skill, Kokushibo notes that this is a feat no ordinary human could achieve and begins trading blows with Sainemi. The Wind Hashira keeps pushing Kokushibo back, but the demon suddenly stomps down on his blade, preventing him from moving it, and then attempts to behead Sainemi. Sainemi pulls out a pistol and blocks Kokushibo's blade with the underside of it, before firing straight at the demon's face. Kokushibo deftly blocks the bullets with his blade and then unleashes a moon-breathing, third form, loathsome moon, chains. Sainemi vanishes from the range of the attack and Kokushibo exasperatedly says that the demon slayers just keep on coming as he sees Chiyomiya Imejima standing in front of him as the stone Hashira declares that the demon slayers have permanence until every last demon is exterminated from the world. Chiyomiya Imejima tells Sainemi Shinazugawa to stitch up his stomach wound and that he would distract Kokushibo to allow him to do so. Sainemi agrees to this and apologizes for getting into such a state to begin with. As the stone Hashira steps up to fight the upper rank, flail swinging, the demon notes with excitement that Chiyomiya has refined his body to its utmost limits, saying that he hadn't seen a warrior of this strength in 300 years. Chiyomiya continues swinging his flail and inhaling deeply the whole while, and Kokushibo notes the air being drawn towards him. Finally attacking Kokushibo with his flail, Chiyomiya looks on as the upper rank dodges his attack but quickly throws his axe at the demon as well. Kokushibo, who had been about to attack Chiyomiya, is forced to abandon this idea to evade the axe as well. He attempts to attack again, but Chiyomiya unleashes a stone-breathing, second form, upper smash. As Kokushibo evades this attack, Chiyomiya catches him in his chains. Restrained, Kokushibo attempts to break free but isn't capable of damaging Chiyomiya's chain. The stone Hashira attempts to cut off Kokushibo's head with his axe, but the demon dodges, but a lock of hair is still severed. Kokushibo is enraged and charges Chiyomiya, attempting to slice off his neck, but the Hashira jumps out of the way at the last second, flinging his axe at the upper rank but only managing to tear off some his robe. Continuing his assault, Chiyomiya swings his flail at Kokushibo as the demon evades yet again. However, Chiyomiya manages to catch Kokushibo's blade between his chains and pulls on them, shattering the blade. The demon continues to be impressed by Chiyomiya's fighting prowess, and the two face off with a stone-breathing, fourth form, volcanic rock, rapid conquest, and a moon-breathing, second form, pearl flowers moongazing. As Kokushibo's blade finally recovers from the blows it received, he taunts Chiyomiya by saying that no matter what damage he receives it will all recover. In response, Chiyomiya utilizes a technique he had been saving up for the battle with Muzan Kibuzui, the demon slayer mark. Muagio Tokito struggles to dislodge himself from where he had been pinned by the upper rank. Slowly dragging the blade out of his body with his remaining hand, Muagio manages to extricate his blade and keels over in pain. Wincing, he stems his bleeding and assesses his situation, noting that he would not be of much use with his current injuries and that he would take some time to be able to stop his bleeding as he had not been blessed with the same physique as someone like Tenjiro. Determined to do something no matter the cost, Muagio resolves to do his best to defeat Kokushibo to aid those who were still alive and fighting. As he grabs his blade and begins to run over to the fight. Meanwhile, Kokushibo and Chiyomiya face off and Kokushibo notices Chiyomiya's Demon Slayer mark and says it is a pity. Noting that Chiyomiya looked to be 27 years of age, he reveals that all those who had gotten Demon Slayer marks had died before they became 25. Predicting that Chiyomiya would die that same night, Kokushibo says that everything Chiyomiya had worked for to this point would all go to waste and asks Chiyomiya if he does not find that regrettable. Silently enraged at these words, Chiyomiya tells Kokushibo that he and the other Demon Slayers had been aware of the story about those with marks all dying before reaching 25. Asking what there was to regret about his life at that point, Chiyomiya declares that one could not become a Hashira with such half-hearted resolution and declares that Kokushibo's words are insults to him. Kokushibo attempts to explain his view more by saying that he had meant the techniques and body Chiyomiya had worked to hone over the years and asks why Chiyomiya cannot understand this. The Stone Hashira responds that there is nothing to understand and that humans understood that their dignity was best preserved by living and dying just as human beings. Chiyomiya rebukes Kokushibo further and tells him not to force his pathetic worldview on others and call it the Supreme One. Continuing on, Chiyomiya says that he had noticed Kokushibo had lied when saying no one with a Demon Slayer mark had lived past 25. Kokushibo attempts to deny this but is cut off by Chiyomiya saying that there must have been one exception and Kokushibo suddenly jolts with understanding and remembrance. Satisfied by this reaction, Chiyomiya deduces that his theory was correct just as Kokushibo darts forward towards the Stone Hashira to slice at him but he is able to block. As the two trade blows, Saiyan recovers from his wounds after having been stitched up, having also reactivated his Demon Slayer mark. He wastes no time in attacking Kokushibo in tandem with Chiyomiya and the demon thinks that all the Hashira of the current time must be marked with Demon Slayer marks. As the two Hashira continue attacking in sync, Kokushibo is surprised at their skilled coordination as the both of them are grateful for the fact that they trained together in Hashira training to allow such coordination. Kokushibo notes that the pair of them must be among the stronger fighters even among the pillars and is especially impressed by Chiyomiya. He sees that Chiyomiya's weapon allows him to overcome his blindness as swinging the chain creates an echo that allows Chiyomiya to judge distance and his surroundings using only sound. Kokushibo decides that the best course of action would be to shatter Saiyan's blade by striking it from the side and attempts to do exactly that. However, Saiyan is able to react quickly and rotate his blade. He also forces Kokushibo's blade down into the ground before launching an attack right at him in tandem with Chiyomiya. The upper rank is impressed as Saiyan slices off more locks of his hair and that his reflexes have actually improved since he was wounded by the demon. Chiyomiya cuts in close and lobs off Kokushibo's left ear with his axe before Saiyan performs a wind-breathing, first form, dust whirlwind cutter that the upper rank is able to dodge. Working together, Chiyomiya and Saiyan unleash stone-breathing, first form, serpentinite bipolar and wind-breathing, seventh form, gale, sudden gusts respectively. They are only able to rip Kokushibo's kimono, however, and the demon rips it off entirely before proceeding to attack the two pillars from afar. They are left shocked at his range and see that his sword has extended and more blades have branched out from it. Kokushibo declares that if he is able to defeat Chiyomiya and Saiyan then defeating everyone else will be quite easy. Saiyan Shinazagawa is hit by Kokushibo's attack and loses the index and middle fingers of his right hand. Cursing his inability to react to the demon's strike, Saiyan notes that were it not for Chiyomiya Imjima using his chain to divert the trajectory of the attack, he would have lost both of his arms. He also sees that the smell of his rare blood was beginning to lose its effect on Kokushibo, ruining that he may quickly become a burden. Kokushibo unleashes a moon-breathing, seventh form, mirror of misfortune, moonlit that sends shockwaves at the demon slayers from afar. Chiyomiya is taken aback at the range of the attack as Kokushibo continues to hammer away at the Hashira, this time with a moon-breathing, eighth form, moon dragon ringtail that catches Saiyan's ankle and causes bleeding. Saiyan is frustrated at his inability to get in close to the demon's head, having to use all his skill simply to dodge his attacks as Kokushibo lines up another attack. Performing a moon-breathing, ninth form, waning moon saiths, Kokushibo causes yet more damage to Saiyan, slashing his back with the attack. Chiyomiya yells out to Saiyan but the wind Hashira says to forget about him as Kokushibo attempts to finish him off with a moon-breathing, 10th form, drilling slashes, moon through bamboo leaves but Muagio saves Saiyan. He says that he would not let Sainemi die as he was still capable of wielding his blade with both arms. Meanwhile, Genya looks on from behind a pillar, frozen in fear that he would simply be effortlessly dispatched by Kokushibo again. Ruing his weakness but still determined to keep his brother alive and help his friends, Genya stays rooted to the spot, neither making a move to attack Kokushibo nor retreating. He suddenly remembers Tanjiro's words that it was the weakest who had the most potential, telling Genya that after a certain number of combatants, people would always prioritize the strongest and thus their guard would be thinner against a perceived weaker opponent. Resolving to do his best, Genya takes out a shard of Kokushibo's blade, ready to do his best to defeat the demon. Gyomir Imejima attempts to perform a stone-breathing, 5th form, Arcs of Justice at Kokushibo but is interrupted by the latter's moon-breathing, 16th form, Moonbow, Half Moon. The stone Hashira is frustrated at the upper rank's never-ending wave of techniques and senses that demon is too quick, picking him off exactly as he tries to fire off a technique. Pondering over what it could be that the demon is seeing, Gyomir attempts to focus and refine his senses, saying that demons are mere transfigurations of the human form and anything they could do, a human could manage as well. Saying that his eyes could see human nature, Gyomir declares that he would not be misled. Kokushibo unleashes another attack and for a split second Gyomir activates the transparent world, now being able to see through him and discern his pulse, dodging the attack. Muagio Tokito attempts to get in close to Kokushibo and slow him down so that he can create an opening for Gyomir or Sainemi Shinazugawa to cut off the demon's head. Gyomir notices this and coordinates with Sainemi to match Muagio's run and distract Kokushibo from 3 sides, adjusting to Muagio's plan on the fly. Kokushibo sees this as an opportunity to defeat all 3 of them at once and unleashes a moon-breathing, 14th form, Catastrophe, 10-man crescent moon at the Hashiras. All 3 manage to dodge his attacks however and Gyomir flings a Juzu bead right into the back of Kokushibo's right hand, shocking the demon just enough to halt his attacks and allow the Hashiras to launch their counter-offensive. Sainemi attacks Kokushibo, forcing him back and Gyomir cleaves off the demon's right shoulder along with his arm and Muagio finishes off this trifecta of attacks by stabbing Kokushibo clean through his abdomen. Stunned, Kokushibo wonders how Muagio had been able to dodge all his attacks while he was wounded. Deducing that this would only be possible if the child was also be capable of entering the transparent world, Kokushibo acknowledges that Gyomir had also achieved such a state and had also taken his own eyes into account by manipulating his blood flow to throw off Kokushibo's attacks. Undeterred since the demon slayers had been unable to sever his neck despite their clever maneuver, Kokushibo plans on analyzing their attacks to develop a counter and then render them demoralized. Gyomir and Sainemi charge at him and Kokushibo prepares to unleash another 16th form as Genya, looking demonic steps out from behind a Hashira and aims his transformed gun at the upper rank. He remembers Muagio's advice to not hesitate and says to himself that as long as he is able to slow the demon down, he is willing to go down with him. Genya fires his gun and Kokushibo quickly diverts his attack to block the bullets. Genya Shinazugawa's bullets rebound off of Kokushibo's blade but swerve back to attack him on their own. Shocked at this, Kokushibo looks up at Genya and sees that the boy and his gun have transformed, looking more demonic. Suddenly, a large tree grows out of the bullets out of Kokushibo rooting him to the ground. Seeing that these are blood demon arts, Kokushibo deduces that Genya absorbed the lock of his hair and the broken bits of his sword to acquire demon powers. His attention is diverted quickly as Gyomir Imejima and Sainemi Shinazugawa lunge at him. Kokushibo lets out a howl and emits crescent-shaped shockwaves from his body that slice at Gyomir Imejima, Sainemi Shinazugawa, Muagio Tokito and Genya Shinazugawa. The demon grows blades from his body and the demon slayers are all pushed back, with Genya being vertically sliced in half, though Muagio stubbornly hangs onto his blade, still piercing Kokushibo's torso. Gyomir and Sainemi charge at Kokushibo and Muagio decides that he needs to do something to kill Kokushibo so that the other pillars would be able to save as much of their strength as possible for the fight against Muzan Kibuzui. In his desperation Muagio's grip on his blade tightens and it suddenly turns bright red, much to Kokushibo's shock. Kokushibo stiffens in agony as the bright red blade sears his very cells. Taking advantage of the demon's newfound immobility, Sainemi slices at his neck and Genya activates a blood demon art from afar at the flesh bullets still inside Kokushibo and makes a tree grow out of his back. Kokushibo attempts to swipe at Genya but finds that he is unable to activate his technique and Gyomir swipes at his head with his flail. Kokushibo resists having his neck cleaved off and Gyomir swipes at it from below with his axe but Kokushibo is able to keep it at bay with his blade. Noting that he is unable to activate his own blood demon art due to the tree using up too much of his blood to grow itself. Meanwhile, Sainemi had jumped and swung his blade down on Gyomir's flail to force it down and chop off Kokushibo's neck. Suddenly both the weapons turned bright red at the spots where they made contact with each other and finally mustered enough strength to chop off Kokushibo's neck and snap his blade in two, as the demon could only remember his brother's words of how the children born after them would surpass them and reach further heights. Kokushibo acknowledges the strength and talent of those who had been fighting him. Noting how they had not let go of their blades despite severe injuries, the capability to use blood demon arts despite being only human, continuing on in spite of blood loss and even managing to turn their blades red though they were not sun-breathing users. Asking what had been so funny about being able to predict such a future as this, Kokushibo says that the mere thought of losing made him seethe with anger. Resolving not to lose, he manages to stem the bleeding from the stump of his neck, much to the shock of Gyomir Imejima, who tells Sainemi Shinazugawa to keep attacking the demon to finally end him and not to let the sacrifices of Genya Shinazugawa and Muajio Tokito be in vain. Sainemi is fired up at these words and unleashes the wind-breathing, 8th form, primary gale slash at Kokushibo as Gyomir follows it up with a stone-breathing, 5th form, arcs of justice. The upper rank manages to dodge Gyomir's axe and slices off Muajio's sword hand. He attempts to pull out the boy's blade and also remove the stump Genya summoned on him. Kokushibo's head slowly begins to regenerate as he continues to evade strikes from Gyomir and Sainemi. Much to their shock, he manages to fully regrow a new head, but it is far more monstrous than what he had before. Suddenly Nezuko swoops down with an axe kick to the newly formed head, crushing it, igniting the blood, causing the upper rank's body to crumble away as he remembers his brother and questions his motives and wonders if all of this is what he had wanted from his life and deeds, calling himself a disgrace to life, and acknowledges that all he had ever wanted was to be like his brother Yoritichi. As the final parts of him crumbles away, a single tear falls down his face. Kokushibo disintegrates entirely, but Sainemi Shinazugawa continues to blindly charge at him and Gyomir Imejima has to stop the wind Hashira, telling him the fight is over. He is shocked to see that Sainemi is in fact unconscious and had been attacking the upper rank in that state. Genya Shinazugawa, still alive, looks on at this scene and weakly whispers Gyomir's name, and the stone Hashira walks up to check on him and is shocked that the boy is still alive. He deduces that it must be due to absorbing a demon, and Genya tells him to focus on treating Muajio Tokito instead. Gyomir pulls out his vial of Tanjiro's blood, injecting it into the boy, to fully regenerate Genya's body, transforming him into a perfect demon under Tanjiro's influence, however leaving him very energy drained, however not as much as a usual person would be as he is used to demon powers. At the same time, Nezuko kneels down next to Muajio's split torso, pulling a vial of Tanjiro's blood out of his pocket, injecting it into the boy, jolting him back to life, regenerating his injuries, however knocking him out due to energy drain. Elsewhere, the Rengoku, Mitsuri, Abanai, Rokuta and Shigeru encounter Nakaime, replacement Upper Moon 4. Rengoku, Matsuri and Abanai charge at her but are pushed back when doors appear in front of them, teleporting them back. Seeing this, Shigeru activates his blood demon art cremation cloak, to enhance his physical strength, speed and reaction time to dash around Nakaime, drawing her attention to himself, nearly cutting her head off a couple times, while Rokuta activates his blood demon art stealthy blaze to turn invisible, removing all traces of his existence, no shadow, no sound, and even no feeling, as it gave him the ability to become intangible for short periods of times. Using this combination, Rokuta snuck behind Nakaime like the mist, slicing her head off with mist-breathing second form, 8-layered mist. As her body began to crumble, so did the Infinity Castle, twisting and turning unnaturally, falling apart with nothing left to hold it together, spitting everyone inside, back outside to the real world. Now in the real world, Musen's flesh capsule is surrounded by demonified low-rank demon slayers. Within the blink of an eye, Musen bursts out in his final form, slicing off the heads of the first troop, mercilessly slicing their bodies to bits, to slow down the regeneration time. Musen gloats at Tameo and says that her medicine to cure demons and turn them back into humans had failed, as the woman responds that this would be the day where Musen would finally go to hell. The demon flippantly responds that hundreds of people had said those same words to him before, but they had yet to come true. Tameo tells him to give back her husband and children, and Musen coldly looks at her and says that in that case she could go join the family she had killed, as he crushes her head in his hand. However, because she is no longer linked to Musen at all and has faster regeneration due to Tanjiro's blood, she survives, however is unable to help in the fight any longer. Muzan swiftly makes short work of the second troop as well, slicing through them all in one move as Kirya orders for them to fall back and asking about the Hashira's whereabouts. Muzan says that not one of them was of use to him as he crippled them and declares that he will end the Demon Slayer Corps on this night as smirks with an evil expression. Kirya recomposes himself and orders for reinforcements to be sent to Muzan's location and to focus all their power on one point to get rid of Muzan once and for all. A crow announces to the other demon slayers that Muzan has been revived and passes on Kirya's order for all the Hashira to gather immediately. Not too long later, Takeo appears, using his blood demon art explosive weapons to summon and control flying burning weapons such as bow and arrows, swords, daggers, sickles, javelins, maces, flails, battle axes, hammers, and whips, to destroy Muzan's tentacles. At the same time, Rokuta and Shigeru join in, using a cremation cloak enhanced flame breathing 5th form, flame tiger, stealthy blaze mist breathing 4th form, shifting flow slash and rainbow breathing, no homo, 4th form, striking tide rainbow sky, to cripple Muzan, amputating his limbs, forcing him back to regenerate. The onslaught doesn't stop as Nezuko jumps down kicking Muzan in the face, igniting her blood burning his arms off and sending him flying into Hanako's Cupid flame, slowing him down enough for Shinobu to poison him even more with Queen Butterfly's fangs, forcing Muzan back once again while he attempts to neutralize the poison and finish regenerating his hands, using a shockwave scream to force the Slayers back, followed by using his mouth suction to pull the Demon Slayers off their feet, in an attempt to slice off their sword hands. However, he is interrupted by a barrage of demon flesh bullets from Genya, forcing him to switch his attention to defend, slicing them in half. Yet once again they sprout into trees, draining Muzan's energy, but he manages to escape cutting the trees down. However, he is met by a swift beheading from Muagio using his blood demon art mist shadow, which covers the area in thick mist that only he can see through clearly, allowing him to surprise attack the Demon Lord. Being forced back yet again, Muzan is enraged, roaring, how they are all so persistent, and that sickened him to the bottom of his heart. Continuing on, the demon says that the demon slayers always talked about avenging their families or friends. However, he believed that they should just be thankful that they themselves had not died and should simply go on back to the way they used to live. Shocked and enraged, the Hashira ask Muzan what he is saying as the demon compares himself to a natural disaster, saying that no one swore vengeance on earthquakes or storms when they killed people, saying that the dead could not be brought back to life and that they should all just go back to earning their daily wages. He says that most humans do that and that the only reason the demon slayers did not do the same was because they were a bunch of deviants and that he was sick of dealing with deviants. Muzan says that he is the one who truly wanted this state of affairs to come to an end as Takeo comes to a boiling point and says with a calm, seething rage that Muzan was a being that should not be allowed to exist. Muzan suddenly swing his mutated whipping arms towards the Slayers, however they are cut up and destroyed by the arrival of Tanjiro and the rest of the Hashira. Seeing Tanjiro, Muzan shivers, and steps back remembering their last fights and Yoritichi. However, he composes himself enough to attack, using his black blood demon art chain of thorns to hold Tanjiro in place, using biokinesis to send a flurry of slashes towards him, all while using his mouth suction to pull him in and off his feet. Despite the nasty combination, Tanjiro had already predicted and countered the attack using the transparent word, biokinesis, and sun-breathing 4th form, burning bones, summer sun, to decimate the attack, then using Fire Wheel to leap behind Muzan, slashing his back, switching to 7th form, Beneficent Radiance to entrap Muzan, punching a hole through his chest. Seeing this, Muzan tried to use his flesh manipulation to absorb Tanjiro's hand, however that was what Tanjiro wanted, as he spread his cells throughout Muzan, destroying him from the inside, preventing him from regenerating his chest. In a desperate response, Muzan swung his flesh tentacles towards the other non-demon Hashira, managing to graze Uzue, Abanai, and Matsuri, spreading lethal poison through their bodies, putting them out of the fight temporarily, despite Tanjiro's best efforts to stop it. Enraged once again, all the Hashira attack, landing deadly blows on Muzan. However, Muzan also managed to wound Chiyomiya, slamming him through a building and also cutting off one of Tomioka's arms. Tanjiro then activated the transparent world and 13th form, and with the help of his sibling, sliced Muzan's 7 hearts and 5 brains, severing his head off. Just like the ending of their second fight, Tanjiro stood in front of Muzan, who was desperately trying to hold his head together with the stump remains of his arms. However, unlike last time, Muzan was also surrounded by all the Hashira left standing, and despite trying to rupture into thousands of flesh chunks to escape, it didn't work, as Shinobu explaining that the third stage of the drug he had absorbed from Tameo was designed to prevent his splitting, seeming as it's how he escaped death twice. Without a way to escape, Muzan uses his flesh shield to cover his body in an attempt for him to have enough time to regenerate. However, Tanjiro easily destroys it with a single massive explosive sun, blowing the Demon King to the floor once again, even more damaged than before, only being a body and head now. While Tanjiro holds Muzan down until sunrise, the rest of the Slayers go around, injecting Tanjiro's blood into any injured Hashira such as Chiyomiya, Matsuri, Abanai, and Uzue, after realizing they couldn't prevent the spread of the poison, transforming them into demons to heal their wounds. After half an hour, the sun began to rise, beaming down on Muzan, burning him to a crisp as he pleads for his life, ending the reign of Muzan the Demon King. After a few hours for everyone to recover and gather, Kiriya Yubayashiki calls for a final Hashira meeting with all the Hashira in attendance. Kiriya announces that the Demon Slayer Corps was disbanding from that moment on. The Yubayashikis express their gratitude to the Hashira and the other Demon Slayers for their centuries of service and bow before them, with the Hashira also protesting in return. Telling the Yubayashikis that they were the ones who kept the Corps together and that they did not want any thanks, the Hashira express their gratitude to the Yubayashikis. Tomioka tells Kiriya that he was excellent at his job and that his father and ancestors would be proud, and the Yubayashikis tear up at these words, as Kiriya thanks Tomioka for his compliment. The two Hashira look to each other and smile, their long journey finally ended. After a few years, Tanjiro marries Kaneo, Tomioka marries Shinobu, now being able to smile, Zenitsu marries Nezuko, Abanai marries Matsuri, Inosuke marries Aoi, Hanako marries Muagio, and the rest of the Kamado sibling also marrying someone, living happily into the future for all of eternity. Okay guys, this is the end of the series. If you enjoyed, please don't forget to like and subscribe, remembering to turn on the notification button. With that being said, this is Demon X Saiyan saying bye.